This is just indicative of life behind the curtain. When you cross the New Jersey border, you're not in the United States anymore. Good morning, Steffon.
Good morning.
You weren't doing anything wrong. Take it from there. What happened to you?
Well, that morning, I was making my way to my garage. I did have my bulletproof vest in my hand and my firearm in my hand that morning. You know, I keep it loaded in my safe.
We need to point out why you would have that. Why did you have that? Bulletproof vest, pistol.
The firearm was issued to me for work purposes. I was working for Loomis Armored at the time. That is a armored car service that basically transports U.S. and foreign currencies to banks.
Okay.
And we also service your ATMs as well, as far as Wawas, etc. From that morning, I was in my garage in the process of disarming my firearm and putting my bulletproof vest in the front passenger seat. My little sister came into the garage. She kind of startled me. It was a brand new firearm, so I never really trained her on firearm safety as of yet. Only had the firearm for about a week. So she came in. I tried to put the firearm away from her to take her back upstairs, you know, because it was about 5:45 in the morning. She had school and I had work. So when I placed the firearm in the glove compartment to secure it away from her, I picked her up, took her upstairs. Process of all that, she's crying, etc. So I'm running late for work. When I realize I'm running late for work, I quickly go back downstairs and I leave. Now, I get pulled over that day for my registration. It had expired that morning, and the police officers stopped me. And when they stopped me, I basically told the officers that I realized I had my firearm in the glove compartment, and I told them who I worked for, and they took the firearm from me. They let me go. They gave me a ticket for my registration, and they said I could pick up my firearm on Monday. And this was a Friday. This happened, and I said, okay, that's fine. I went down there to pick up my firearm thinking everything was okay, and they placed me under arrest and charged me with unlawful possession of a firearm, which is a second-degree felony in the state of New Jersey, and you can face up to a mandatory 5 years in prison under the Graves Act offense with a maximum term of 10 years in prison.
A couple of questions, if I may. Now, we have Loomis armored cars down here where I live in South Carolina. And all of the people that work for them that are armed guards, like yourself in New Jersey, they get something called a SLED card, which is a certification for them to work and carry a gun in the open. Because around here, we don't have open carry. We only have concealed carry. In New Jersey, do they not have any sort of a credential that counts for you as an armored? I mean, it's not like you're just carrying a gun around because it's cool. This is part of your profession. Do they have anything that gives you a credential to make that okay?
Besides carry concealed, that's pretty much it. But due to the circumstances of the case, they really, it's like there was no hope for me, you know. In the process of my work and for me to pursuing a career in law enforcement, they didn't even take that into consideration when I went to court, you know. And it's like they were just trying to get a conviction out of me, and me being the type of person I am, I was scared, you know, and I have a family, you know, I have a great support system at home. I have to be a role model for my younger siblings, you know. If I'm not here, I mean, my parents are there, but at the same time, if you have older siblings, they have to be a positive role model in your life as well, you know. And what good am I if I'm in prison for 5 to 10 years to them, you know?
Not at all.
Anything could have happened.
Yes.
You know, and I just took into consideration that I have a positive family at home, good support system, and I avoided prison. So now we're in the process of appealing. I did hire Mr. Evan Nappen as my attorney.
Yeah.
He's working on the appeal for me.
Evan Nappen would have to be, considering where he works, I mean, being a gun rights attorney in New Jersey that's like being a special operations soldier, really, because I'm sure he gets lots and lots of practice. You definitely picked up the right attorney. Have you, I'm sure you've done things with Anthony Calandro, the gun for hire. I'm sure he's had a few chats with you too, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you took the plea bargain because, one, you're young. And like you said, you got a family and everything. You're not going to be doing anybody any good. But, two, you took the plea bargain because as soon as you got done with that, you've sort of fallen back. You're regrouping, and you're going after the law, aren't you? You're going after the law that got you. Yes, I am.
It was. I'm appealing because due to the circumstances of the case and bringing certain things that took place in my case to Mr. Nappen's attention, he felt as though we have a lot of strong points that needed to be pointed out on a higher level in the court system. For one, we did. The prosecutor did recommend PTI for me. And I was okay with that because the police department that was in the process of hiring me, they said if I took a PTI deal, I would be able to pursue my career in law enforcement because I would only do 6 months of PTI. Basically, what they'll do is just put me on a timeout from owning a firearm, and I would get my firearm back. And I would be without a felony conviction. Now that I have a felony conviction, this is where we stand now. And prior to me appealing, due to the fact that Evan Nappen spoke on my behalf with the NRA, that motivated me to appeal my case.
One thing that now I've heard Nappen talking about that when all of this transpired, there was an amnesty period going on, and I want to talk about that when we get back. The other thing I want to ask you, I've never been to New Jersey, and based upon some of the things I've heard that happens in New Jersey, I'm not going. But I got to ask, simply because of the two latest cases that have come out of New Jersey where they're just taking regular people and just trying to throw the book at them and ruin their lives. There's you and there's Shaneen Allen. And
yes.
Both of you are Black American. Both of you are young. And in the eyes of certain police officers, that makes you a gangbanger, doesn't it? Or something like that. Is that how you got swept up?
Well, I really don't like to play the race card too much.
I don't either.
Yeah, I know you don't. I know exactly what you're saying, but to be honest with you, Holland Park, New Jersey, if you're a resident of New Jersey in the Middlesex County area and you know Holland Park, New Jersey, to be a minority and to have conversations with other minorities, they do feel that township is very, very, very racist. But I don't really like to play that card.
This portion of the show brought to you by G-Code, TacticalHolsters.com. They will work everywhere except the state of New Jersey. To reinforce that notion, joining me again from New Jersey is Steffon, Lamont, Josey. Steffon, am I getting your name right? Because I've seen so many different. I've seen 2 or 3 different versions of your name. Am I getting that right when I'm announcing you?
I have a very long name, but my last name is hyphenated with Davis, but you can call me Steffon, Lamont, Josey. That's fine.
Okay. I asked you this question before, and see, I don't like playing the race card either. However, when I look, when I look at a picture of Shaneen Allen is, a young lady. She's a mother of 2.
Mm-hmm.
She's done everything correctly. She went out and got a gun, and she lives in Pennsylvania, and she thought that, she lived in the United States, and she drove over to New Jersey, gets pulled over for what? A bad tail light or an improper lane change or whatever she got pulled over for. And she volunteers, like you did, that I've got a gun in the car with me. And then they go just completely Armageddon all over her, just like they've tried to do with you. And you guys had this sort of Damocles hanging over your head. I just got to ask again, does this happen to white people in New Jersey? If they have the same transgression, do they get the same kind of thing happening? If they make that mistake, what you did, you made a mistake. What she did, she made a mistake. That's not, you had no intent.
No intent whatsoever. And there's a similar case that was just actually dismissed. It's the Gordon Van Gilder case now. He, too, had a firearm in his glove compartment, but it was antique flintlock pistol. But at the same time, under the 5B39-C, under that law, it's antique and modern-day pistols fall into the same category of a 5 to 10 year sentence under the Graves Act. So his case was actually dismissed. He was represented by Evan Nappen, but his was dismissed immediately. There was no plea bargains or anything like that. And in Middlesex County, I was getting the short end of the stick, basically. And he's an older white gentleman.
I would have to agree with you on that one. I completely forgot about that case with that. I know that in New Jersey, they only just recently passed laws like if you're going to the range or something that you can stop and get a cup of coffee with the gun in the car. I mean, it's ridiculous. From here, now you've taken the plea bargain, you're pulling back, you petitioned Governor Christy to pardon you, haven't you?
Yes, we did.
And you're also going to appeal this decision because you got plans. You want to work in law enforcement, don't you?
Yes, I do. I have lots of plans, It's just kind of ridiculous what's going on, and it just stopped me. This is putting a two-year halt on all my dreams and plans that I had ever since I got out of high school. So I'm just wishing and hoping for the best, and I can continue and pursue that career once this is all over.
Well, I mean, for people that have never seen you, you have this clean, you have a Secret Service look about you, you know? I mean, you're just that clean cut. And, I just don't, you know, in my state, what did you get pulled over for? Your registration had expired. In my state, if that had happened and you had said, I've got a gun in my glove compartment, they just simply would have said, well, don't go to your glove compartment while we're talking to you, okay? And then they would have given you a ticket and you would have been on your way. And New Jersey and South Carolina are in the same country.
Yeah, you know, it's just unconstitutional what they're doing in New Jersey, and it's like a plague that's going on, because I don't know if you're aware, but Evan Nappen did quote and say this. I believe there was 150 cases similar to myself and Shaneen Allen that are pending right now. And, you know, I'm just trying to become a positive role model to those that are going through this, because, you know, just because you're in the jam with the court system don't mean that's your only way out, or a plea is your only way out. I'm fighting for myself, and I'm fighting for them as well, because this is going to be, myself and Shaneen Allen, Brian Akins, you know, we're the voice of what's going on. You know, legally owned gun owners, we're getting the short end of the stick, and you have murderers and rapists and criminals and all types of other people that are out there that are just roaming free. It's like they're the only ones that are allowed to carry weapons, but we're not allowed to, you know. And by my house alone, this whole week it's been like 6 shootings, you know, and it's like you have little kids that are out here. Who's going to protect them? The police aren't always around, you know, and it's just unfair. It just goes against our constitutional rights to protect ourselves.
The other thing that I admire about you is your story, like Shaneen Allen's, has gone sort of viral. So you've probably gotten a lot of people saying, hey, move to Texas. Hey, move to Arkansas. Hey, move to Arizona. To your credit, you've decided to stand and fight, haven't you?
Yes, I decided to stand and fight, because if I do leave, then who's really going to be the voice that's been through this from our state? You know, Shaneen Allen, she's a voice, but she's not from New Jersey. She's from Pennsylvania, where they honor you to carry your firearm.
Right.
New Jersey, there's really no voice right now that, you know, you have to go through what I've been through to really understand and stand up for it and be a voice for this state. You know, I just can't leave yet. You know, I just can't up and go after they did what they did to me, and just leave the state where it's at. You know, I have a positive voice now, you know, and I have a lot of support throughout the country, you know, and I just want to help pass bills and help change things in the state so we can all be free, because just because I'm from New Jersey doesn't mean it can't happen to you if you were visiting. You know, there's a family from South Carolina that came to New Jersey. They're going through the same thing. You know, it's just not public yet, but I know what's going on with them, and it's just unfortunate, and it's just unconstitutional, and it's a plague that's going on in New Jersey right now, and they're just making innocent people into criminals. You know, state workers, everything. You know, it's just nobody is safe.
If you want to encourage Steffon, or if you want to find out how you may be able to help Steffon, you can find him on Facebook. I believe that's the easiest way to find you, right? Steffon Lamont Josey.
Yes,
just
sir.
Just like it sounds. Steffon Lamont Josey. I'm going to stay in contact with you. We need to get Evan back on the show. Maybe have both of you in here. That's got to be sort of like a tag team going into a courtroom situation. So I want to keep abreast of what's going on here. Certainly, good luck with this. You are inspirational. There's a lot, you know, I don't know that I stay in a state that does me that wrong. I think you let me go, suckers. I'm headed out. I'm going across the border. So good for you. Excellent for you. Well done. And we will stay in touch. Thank you for your time.
Oh, no problem, sir. Take care, and thank you.
Steffon Lamont Josey, just making a mistake, facing 10 years in prison.
I've also asked the school board to make a part of every day some kind of anti-violence, anti-gun message. Every day, every school, at every level. One thing that I think is clear with young people and with adults as well is that we just have to be repetitive about this. It's not enough to simply have a catchy ad on a Monday and then only do it every Monday. We need to do this every day of the week and just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way.
Brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way. Brainwash people, brainwash people, brainwash people, brainwash people, brainwash people, brainwash people.
Mr. Speaker, the question presented today is whether we, as a body, will substitute one completely arbitrary limit for a smaller and even more arbitrary limit on magazine size, instantly turning millions of our fellow citizens, law-abiding New Jersey residents, into second-degree criminals. For the offense, Mr. Speaker, of possessing a metal box with a spring, including magazines for the most commonly owned handguns, this body intends to treat otherwise law-abiding citizens the same way it treats sex offenders, aggravated arsonists, burglars, and kidnappers. For the offense of peaceably owning an utterly harmless item, we will throw these peaceful citizens into jail for up to 10 years, at a cost to the public of up to $80,000 per annum, fine them up to $150,000, and utterly destroy their lives. And for what? A public relations stunt. Because that, Mr. Speaker, is what this bill is all about. It will do precisely nothing to save a single life, but will ruin numerous other lives, all the while impinging on basic fundamental constitutional rights, all that some folks can say that they are doing something. Whenever this subject comes up, Mr. Speaker, logic, never mind common sense, goes right out the window. Let's start with simple logic. If the number of bullets we permit in a magazine is measured by the number of dead children we're willing to accept, the only even remotely moral number is 0. That, presumably, is what led some of our Democratic colleagues in the other House to intone confiscate, confiscate, confiscate. When someone avers that the reason for adopting this particular arbitrary limit is that a mass killing perpetrated by a nutcase, a child was killed with the 11th round, one has to ask, what about the child killed with the 9th? Fortunately, Assemblyman Cryan has a bill ready in the wings to limit magazine sizes down to 5. But then, what about the child killed with the 4th bullet? The simple fact is that any arbitrary limit does nothing to save lives, but simply turns huge numbers of our neighbors into criminals. Now let's talk about common sense, Mr. Speaker. We do not measure our freedoms against the possibility that a lunatic, psychopath, or basely evil criminal will abuse them. A free society asks not why people want or need their freedom. It asks why government would restrict it. On a more banal level, we do not limit alcohol sales to 2 shots because some of them might lead to a DWI. We do not consider someone possessing a six-pack as wielding assault beer, nor ask why another would actually need to buy a gallon or a keg of wine or beer. We do not ban cars to prevent speeding, nor insist that they come standard with ignition interlocks to ensure against drunk driving. We do not limit possession of swimming pools to licensed lifeguards, despite the fact that children are substantially more likely to die by drowning than by gunshot, let alone by mass murder. And none of these items, Mr. Speaker, booze, cars, pools, are endowed with constitutional protections. Presumably, we could severely regulate, if not outright ban them, and all within our authority as legislators. But, for the most part, we don't, despite the fact that they are much more deadly than firearms, let alone those in the hands of law-abiding citizens. And why not? Because we understand that their utility outweighs the dangers. But apparently, a segment of our population simply doesn't like guns, doesn't trust the people, but does trust the government. In this, they have their priorities absolutely backwards. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, we see the hypocrisy in this segment of the bill, which expressly permits former police officers to carry 15-round magazines. Why? What makes a former cop any more vulnerable or any more trustworthy than his neighbor? In an infamous case of assault by popcorn in Texas, which produced a tragic killing, the shooter was a retired cop. There's precisely no reason to trust former governmental employees with instrumentalities which would land his neighbor in jail for up to a decade. Mr. Speaker, again, we are speaking here of a metal box with a spring, which any child can lawfully possess by simply moving 500 yards across the Delaware to a state which takes its freedom more seriously while valuing the lives of its children no less, because they know a silly proposal when they see one. Mr. Speaker, if this proposal is adopted, not dozens, not hundreds, but many thousands, if not millions of people whose only offense is to own the wrong size metal box will be potentially ensnared in the criminal justice system, face long, sometimes mandatory sentences, and have their lives destroyed. And for what? There is quite literally no benefit to public safety from a proposal such as this. It will not save one life, while potentially ruining tens of thousands. It represents not just bad policy, but not even profoundly silly policy, but absurd and unconstitutional policy. Mr. Speaker, this bill represents the latest in a long line of anti-freedom proposals which do nothing to advance public safety, but greatly impinge upon the rights of the people. While there is certainly room for improvement in the criminal justice system, and room for improvement in our method of identifying those in need of mental health services and ensuring that they receive it, there should be absolutely no room for restricting rights and freedoms and ruining the lives of law-abiding citizens, whose only offense is running afoul of a public relations gesture. If the law instantly turns millions of citizens who have never even thought about committing a crime into the equivalent of sex offenders, it's almost certainly a really bad idea. Policy, Mr. Speaker, especially that touching the most cherished rights of Americans, ought to be calmly, rationally, and dispassionately made. It's no more rational to blame a firearm when a criminal or lunatic misuses it than it is to blame Heineken or Ford for a DWI. Punishing the guilty and helping the mentally imbalanced to ensure that they do not become a danger to themselves or others is well within the prerogative of this body. But depriving millions of people of their cherished rights because an infinitesimally small number of our fellow citizens abuse those constitutionally guaranteed liberties is unwise, improper, and unconstitutional. This proposal is not a reasonable measure to save lives, but it does have huge consequences upon personal freedom. It will stop no criminals and will create thousands of new ones. It will work hardships upon millions of our fellow citizens, those people we purport to represent. For those reasons, Mr. Speaker, I urge a negative vote.
The tyrants did it. Hitler took the guns. Stalin took the guns. Mao took the guns. Fidel Castro took the guns. Hugo Chavez took the guns. And I'm here to tell you, 1776 will commence again if you try to take our firearms. Doesn't matter how many lemmings you get out there on the street begging for them to have their guns taken. We will not relinquish them. Do you understand? And that's why you're going to fail, and the establishment knows no matter how much propaganda, the Republic will rise again when you attempt to take our guns.